Wait for it. And we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. The podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, I just want you to know that Madam Stabby took a recording of our last episode. She sent it to the local theme park, and I had been given a job opportunity to DJ the roller coasters. So we're walking, we're stopped. Make sure your trays are in the upright and locked position before the roller coaster starts. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's an airplane, dude. They don't have tray tables.
Man, I'm going to lose the job on the first day.
Just cut out the tray table part and you'll be fine.
You have to secure your sunglasses.
Okay, sunglasses. See, I don't ride roller coasters. I haven't been to a theme park since, I don't know, like 1990. It probably wasn't that long ago, but it's been a while. That's all I'm saying. All right. So with that being said, before we introduce our topic, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves. So the lovely Mr. John Eppel isn't here. So when he gets on, we'll let him introduce. Sometimes life happens, but we hope he can join us because he had lots of opinions on this topic. Instead, we're going to go ladies first because we are gentlemen sometimes-ish. And the ish does a lot of the heavy lifting. But we're going to let Miss Terry K. Job introduce herself to our listeners and viewers.
Hi, I'm Terry K. Job, a big fan of Ish. I use it all the time. A audiobook narrator, baby author, and just a fun-loving nerd.
And we do have an interview being scheduled that will air sometime after this one where we talk to her all about the wild world of Terry's narrating. Voices by Terry?
Yes.
Is that what we're going to call it? The voices
yes, that could be fun.
The voices inside Terry's head? We got to figure it out.
Oh, that might be going a little bit too deep. That could get dark.
Okay.
That's an episode in itself.
Yeah, no kidding.
We could actually do an episode about writing insanity, like writing crazy people well in fiction.
Ooh.
That could be an interesting one. All right. And next, we have Mr. John Eppel. I told you he'd make it. John, Nick kicked you out. That was all Nick. I gave him the power.
Son of a bitch.
Already. John, can you introduce yourself?
That guy, that's why.
Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm John. I'm the guy that Nick kicked out.
All right. Well, that's an excellent introduction. Sometimes he draws the pretty pictures. He writes the comics. He harasses everyone, and he's got opinions. So with that being said, Paul, you're next.
I'm Paul Sparks. I'm a relatively new author. I've got a few short stories in a couple of different anthologies. Currently working on 3 or 4 different projects. Depends on which way the squirrels have me go. So this is just all new to me, and I'm having a blast.
Out freaking standing. Squirrel? Where's a squirrel? I didn't see a squirrel. Did I not?
Squirrel?
All right. Well, I didn't get invited to that party. The next part of the introduction, dear listener, is how we found them. And so, yeah, it was actually at a Sarcasm Anonymous meeting, but we decided we ain't no quitters, so we just left. And we started a club and a podcast. So, yeah, freaking A, man. And all right, we have had all of these lovely people on the podcast before. So instead of asking them the religion question, again, we're going to ask them the coffee question because we are sponsored by a coffee. Do you guys have any daily rituals for your coffee or tea?
Drink it.
Drink it's a good one. How do you drink? Well, you drink it black like your soul, but like do you drink it with anything, like in a special cup, special
being
food?
a ginger, I don't have a soul, so I
This is true. All right. So moving right along, Terry.
It really depends if I'm working that day or if I'm not working that day, since a lot of my coworkers don't like the fancy flavored coffee that I have because they're boring.
They are boring. Change my mind, Nick. Change my mind.
I could have told you that.
All right. And Paul, you don't drink coffee or tea because you're not an author anymore. You've had that card revoked, but I'm assuming you drink things. So
yes.
When you drink your caffeine, how do you take it? Like, do you drink it in a special mug? Do you say a prayer to the undead because, you know, you're a heathen? I don't know. What
I just put some of that, the Mio caffeine drink supplement in a 16.9 ounce bottle of water and usually put 5 or 6 squeezes of it and drink it that way.
Boring. You need to drink coffee. We'll convert you. I don't know about you, Nick and Stabby. You can answer next, but I have my special mug. When I was a graduate student at Villanova, I worked the work. What do you call those job work study thingies that they do? It's been a while, people, a couple years. And so I worked for food services, and they had these cups. They call them the quarter mugs, where you could get refills for a quarter if you spent $20 at the beginning of the season. Or the beginning of the semester, and all the college students would buy them because they were from rich spoiled kids, and then they just throw them in the trash. So I had like a collection of like 100 of those mugs, and I finally down to my last 3, and the handle's almost broken off, and it leaks. So I'm gonna have to find a new mug. But my ritual has always been my graduate school mug. It's sad. I'm gonna actually have a funeral. We're gonna bury it in the backyard. Thank you, Stabby. You feel my pain. She's miming today. The next podcast topic.
All mine have various smart-ass remarks on them that aren't necessarily suitable for public consumption.
But they're just right for us. All right, Nick.
Yes.
I have one my friend gave me that says, "Pay no attention to my browser history. I'm a writer."
I like it. We gave Nick the power, and now he is going bonkers with all of the little scroll bars.
See what happens when you give him a little bit of power?
My mom bought me a cup when I turned 18, and it says, "Don't judge me. I'm not stupid. I'm just blonde."
Nice.
I'm the only blonde in my family.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. You already want to stab me.
But I do have my favorite cups that I drink out of. This is the newest one that just came in. It says, "And then I just snapped." And it's got bloody handprints and stuff on it.
Does the blood move and change like when it gets hot or cold?
No, not on this one. We all know that I love my other cup for obvious reasons that I'm not allowed to say on the show because it says it 6 times. 6 times. But I'm not allowed to use that word. So, yeah, there's that cup. And then Nick is such a sweetheart. He did just buy me a new one, and it should be here by Halloween, and it actually says Madam Stabby on it.
He
No,
wants
It's
something.
domestic terrorism, and you know it.
All right. We're gonna have. Never mind. I was gonna make a joke about you can show your curse word cup, and then I'd like throw a censored picture out, but I'm just too lazy. So we're just gonna move on. All right. So the first is you're gonna pretend that was in there. We'll insert blah blah blah. No, we won't. Who am I kidding? We're not inserting anything in post because again, lazy. All right. Well, we're selectively lazy because they're getting 3 episodes a week now. So I think it's a balancing act.
The only other addition to go in coffee is whiskey. Whiskey goes in coffee.
She's got a valid point.
Goes in coffee.
I will accept that. So the topic today is mythical or legendary creatures. So first off, I'm going to read the definition I shamelessly stole from the Wikipedia website, which I will link in the show notes. So a legendary creature, also called mythical or mythological, is a type of fantasy entity, typically a hybrid, that has not been proven and that is described in folklore, including myths and legend, but may be featured in historical accounts before modernity. Where they describe modernity is anyone's guess, but, it's the internet. In classical era, monster creatures such as the Cyclops and the Minotaur appear in heroic tales for the protagonist to destroy. Other creatures such as the unicorn were claimed in accounts of natural history by various scholars of antiquity. Some legendary creatures have their origin in traditional mythology and were believed to be real creatures, for example, dragons, griffins, and unicorns. Others were based on real encounters, originating in gnarled and garbled accounts of travelers' tales, such as the vegetable tail lamb of Tartary, which supposedly grew tethered to the earth. All right. I have
like gingers with souls?
What's that?
You mean like gingers with souls? That kind of mythical creature?
Yeah, that kind of mythical creature. But don't worry, I'm told
Those
every
bastards don't exist.
So
Hey, JR.
yes,
Nick didn't get to answer the coffee question.
he did not. Nick, grab your sack and just sound off. You're supposed to do this on your own.
Oh,
I did, but Stabby took over.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Use your
that's
big
tough.
boy
Yeah.
voice.
She does that. It's okay.
Okay, what is your
If I use my
coffee
big
ritual?
boy voice, certain things ain't gonna happen, and I like those things.
All right, that is very, very valid for married folks. So we will accept that, and we will move on. And you can answer the coffee rituals.
Oh, it's simple. On my days off, it's black coffee, like my soul and my hopes and dreams, and I put bourbon in it, which restores the hopes and dreams. And on the days that I am working, since it's been hot, I usually don't drink coffee, so I'll drink an Ultra Sunrise Monster
Out of your favorite Batman mug.
out of my favorite Batman mug that I got at Six Flags.
Do you sing the Batman theme song when you drink it?
Yeah, you can't be drinking out of a Batman mug without going, I'm Batman.
No.
I'm sorry.
I am vengeance. I am caffeinated.
He gets mad if I even watch it.
Oh yeah, nobody touches the mug. Nobody.
You'll
me.
no. That's bad. You don't wash the coffee mugs. What
I'll
kind of
throw a
human are you?
nun out of a third-story window if she touched my mug. That's how
You're
serious
saying
I
you'll
am about it.
defenestrate the nun?
Yeah.
So a
I was
nun.
raised Catholic, went to a Catholic school. Absolutely, she's going out a window.
Oh,
Sister
hold on,
Mary,
Nick.
Margaret, Catherine, whatever.
Is that a nunchuck then? Because you chucked her out the window?
Well, I
Wow.
need two.
See what I did?
Okay, yeah, because I thought I was going to need two tied together for a nunchuck. But yeah, if I'm chucking a nun out of the window,
Because you
that's definitely a
defenestrated her.
nunchuck. Yeah.
That is my favorite word for some reason. Ever since I read about the defenestration.
See, I don't know that word. It's a big word, so I'm gonna have to take it as disrespect.
So defenestration is the art or act of throwing someone out a window.
Oh,
And
that's
they
gonna be my
famously-
new favorite move.
They famously threw
It could be a
a
move.
politician
It's a
out a
vibe.
window in Prague, and he landed in the dung heap, and it became the defenestration of Prague.
Mhm.
My favorite
Oh.
story in history.
I'm gonna have to
Okay, I'm
figure
gonna
out
have
a
to
way
learn
to
how to spell
put
that
that in a
and say
comic.
it properly.
I
that's
would
going
just
in
like
the
to
comic.
reenact that with all of my favorite politicians.
And some of my least favorite people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why discriminate? All right, so
line forms to the left.
You get a defenestration, and you get a defenestration.
Yeah,
it
I'm
will
gonna be like
the
Oprah up in that piece.
defenestration. And
Look
now
under
the
your
FBI
seats,
is
yep.
pounding on your door. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so we've gone over the definition of mythical creature, legendary creature, if you prefer. So, did you agree with the base wiki assessment?
I'll let it slide.
Okay,
Seems
we appreciate
reasonable.
that. Very gracious. Paul,
Yeah,
Terry,
I could see. Yeah, I agree with that.
Reasonable.
The
For Wikipedia.
definition was so long, I stopped listening after the second sentence. So.
too long didn't read. Okay, basically they're not real, but they existed in stories. Like on the maps where in the water it said "There be monsters."
See, you could have just said that.
But then I didn't sound as smart as I stumbled over all of those big words.
He had a word salad to get through, damn it.
I gotta sound like I did my research, damn it. That's right. All right.
He's a responsible host.
So now we've talked about what Wikipedia says a mythical creature is. Let's talk about them. So is there, and this is something that Paul brought up in the pre-show, so we'll give him all the credit. And if you don't like the question, he also gets all the credit. But is there a difference between a monster and a mythical creature? Because I'm noticing some overlap between the monsters in this.
I think it really depends on the intent of the creature. Like if it's just chaotic evil and purely wants to eat you out of malice, that's a monster. If it's something like a unicorn or a griffin that's basically good or has like chicks to feed in the case of a griffin, I would call that mythical.
But yet, a griffin will still rip you to shreds if you don't know anything, or if you haven't befriended it. I mean,
Oh yes, but it
monsters-
has chicks to feed.
and it doesn't have to be malevolent. Look at the Fae. They are considered, some Fae are considered not malevolent, but yet they're mythical and
They're mischievous as hell too.
they are.
Screw up your day.
Okay.
Okay, so I asked the question to a website, Kiora, and there is an answer, and it's quite humorous. Would you like to hear it?
Ooh.
Somebody asked the difference between a monster and a mythical creature. Answer: a monster can rip your arms off and your legs and squash your iPod. A mythical creature is always hiding until the end of the story, or yarn, or yore, and by the time it can be a little scary is when you're already sound asleep. Bedtime
I'll allow
stories.
it.
Huh.
I'll allow it. All right. Does anyone want to add to that? I think there's a lot of overlap.
There's a lot
There's
of
a lot of
overlap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Monster
the
Speed,
Venn
mythical
diagram's almost a
creatures,
circle. That's all I'm saying.
I hate this stuff. We gotta fix this.
Yeah. We
Um,
could.
No. So, it depends on their behavior. That's just what it comes down to. It's their behavior, because Terry said that unicorns are a mythical creature, and 9 times out of 10 unicorns are just a beautiful, lovely, peaceful, mythical creature, until you go into the cabin in the woods where they're
Thank
freaking
you.
monstrous and stabbing people with their horn, or in the newest Shazam movie when they didn't get their Skittles. So then they became monsters.
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah.
Stab the rainbow.
Yeah, because they would.
It has different interpretations.
Tasting the rainbow?
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about
That depends
this.
on depends on what you consider as tasting the rainbow.
Well, that's a different topic for a different time. I was
Exactly.
pointing out
Unicorns!
a different
Unicorns!
So for the record, Paul,
Unicorns.
we're not that kind of podcast. I'm just saying.
Unicorns! I'm just going to keep saying it. Unicorns.
I know that there's only one left because I watched the last Unicorn. I know how this ends.
Oh, what a traumatizing movie.
It was.
Oh yeah.
But amazing.
It was amazing. It's probably some of the best animation you're going to see at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So speaking
by
of
hands
last
down.
Unicorn, let's go for there. What is the first mythical creature you've heard of?
Dragons.
Okay.
Dragons.
Yeah, I think I'd go for that too.
I was
Okay.
going to say Unicorn from The Last Unicorn because I watched that movie pretty early, but I also distinctly remember sitting on the back of my dad's recliner when I was about 3 as he read The Hobbit to me, which has a dragon in it. So I think dragon's probably it for my first one.
I would probably say that most people's introduction to mythical creatures would be a dragon, because they're everywhere. Them and unicorns. I think they're tied. Dragons.
What
and
about you?
unicorns.
What about you, Stabby?
Fairies.
Oh, go on.
Ferngully.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Good movie.
Ferngully was one of the first ones where it wasn't, Ninja Turtles or something where an ooze made them what they are. Ferngully was one of the first ones. And, mythical creatures.
For me, it was Sea
Fairies.
Monster, but I grew up in a Navy town around a bunch of sailors. When I was younger, my stepdad was still with the special boat units, so it was a special kind of weirdos. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
So we
it's
heard
called
about
the Navy.
monsters. Yeah, basically the Navy in general, but they were just trying to mess with me. So it was sea monsters. And if you've ever been out at night in the ocean, because I did what they call them tiger cruises back in the day, the phosphorescence that would glow. I was told that was the blood of the dying sea monsters that they killed to keep us safe.
Nice.
That was my formidable kindergarten memory.
Well,
It's
that's
bioluminescent
That explains
algae.
a lot.
well,
It
that's
probably
kind of what
does, but
that's what the Lost Subs are. The Eternal Patrol. They are patrolling and keeping us safe from the creatures that lurk in the dark in the seas.
it makes me think of a series that I've been meaning to get into. I think it's called the Destroyer Man series, and it's literally about Navy ships from I think World War I that somehow go into a storm and come out on the other side in like fantasy worlds, and they're like destroyers against monsters. It's kind of a cool theme. I'm just not rich enough to buy the $100 to get all 12 books.
Damn.
I know ebooks getting more
I mean-
expensive these days.
When it comes to mythical creatures, though, I think a lot of kids do start with fairies, and they just don't really see it that way, because almost every Disney movie has a fairy in it.
Tooth fairy.
Some sort, yeah.
Or what about elves? Because elves are fairies, I guess, sort of.
No,
No, what?
No, they're not.
It depends on your source, I think.
Well, if it's like the Santa Claus kind of elves, that's one
Yeah, that's what I'm
thing,
thinking
but
of.
The Lord of the Rings kind of elves, completely different.
I was thinking
Yeah.
more like Santa Claus because everyone's talking about Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus.
Well, then you've got the Seelie Court and the Unseelie Court, which are also elves.
I have no idea what that is. Go on.
Okay, the
I've been
Unseelie
outnumbered
Court
on
or the
this
Court
one.
of Winter is basically the dark, the nasty. Think of Drow as being part of an Unseelie Court. And then the Seelie Court, you get the Dryads, the Fairies, to use a D&T, Moon Elves, or the elves from The Hobbit would be considered Seelie Court, which is the Summer Court. It's it's Celtic in origin.
Okay.
See, the longer I sit here and think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, I think Fergoli was one of the first ones that I saw, but then I'm really sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, wait a minute. Cinderella had a fairy godmother and talking mice. Little Mermaid.
That could have just been a
She
drug
was a
trip.
mermaid, you know.
And Beauty and the Beast had that witch fairy character.
What did they call her? An enchantress?
The Enchantress. Yeah. Yep. You're right.
I mean, look at Sleeping Beauty, turned into a dragon.
And she had 3 fairies looking after her. Dragons and fairies.
So I guess you could say Disney was like, I would say my first introduction to, because we would watch The Wonderful World of Disney growing up on Sundays, and they had Fantasia or Night on Witch Mountain, stuff like that.
Oh, and Escape from Witch Mountain.
Escape from Witch Mountain was so good.
Yeah.
And Fantasia.
Witch Mountain. Yeah. Those were all awesome.
Yeah, all the dancing ostriches.
That's back when Disney was good.
Exactly.
Yeah, with drunken elephants.
It was, but if you really think about it, almost, I'm not saying every Disney movie, but almost all of the classics had some sort of mythical creature in it. Most of them.
Okay.
Actually, Snow White did. Cinderella did. Sleeping Beauty did.
Black Cauldron did. That was my favorite.
Black Cauldron.
Oh, that's a good one.
Scared the shit out of me as a kid.
I know, but I loved it.
Skis.
I don't think I've seen that one.
You are
It's
missing
a
out,
phenomenal movie.
You should.
I think it's on Disney if you have it.
I
have to check it
actually
out.
saw it in the theater when they released the 40th anniversary edition in the theaters again.
I saw it in the theater when it came out. I loved it.
Shit, you're old.
Shut up.
No, like, I'm really sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, so what movies didn't have that? And I'm like, okay, maybe Lion King? I mean,
Well,
they were
they're
talking
talking-
animals, but...
They're talking animals.
Yeah,
But I think the fact that they're all animals almost negates that.
Yeah.
I mean, Aladdin
It's like
had
the-
mythical.
Yes. Genies.
You had a gin.
You had a
Yeah.
genie. And a magic carpet.
Okay.
Yes.
Puff the Magic Dragon. Or was it that
Oh.
Disney?
Pete's
So
Dragon.
when
No, that was
In high
Disney.
Dragon. Yeah.
Pete's Dragon was pretty cool.
I like
So-
Pete's Dragon.
When did you guys transition from the Disneyfication of the topic of all things mythical and legendary to the more historical Grimm version? And I'm not talking just Grimm's fairy tales, just the darker version that older myth and legends tended to be, because they tended to be moral tales. They teach you, listen to your mom and don't go out at night kind of thing. So when did everyone realize that, all this stuff wasn't sunshine and rainbows and lollipops?
When my brother forced me to watch it when I was 5 years old.
Oh!
Explains a lot. Go on.
The clowns were not scary. Well, clowns weren't scary before that. Clowns were just clowns. And then I watched that. And now clowns are scary. Drains are scary. Bathtubs are scary. You don't go near the grates in the streets. And that clown could also, show up as a completely different entity depending on what you're scared of. And all of a sudden, something that was supposed to be innocent and fun is no longer innocent fun, and it's scary. So,
So I don't know. For me, clowns are always bozo, and when I think clown, I think Otis Spunkmeyer cookies and Schwinn bicycles.
I think
And
of
voice of the stage.
John Wayne Gacy.
Okay, you
Okay,
definitely.
okay.
Nick, you get like insurance with Border Patrol, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm
she
just
uses every
saying,
bit of it.
you asked at what point it stopped being the Disney sweet stuff and it started being the more scary, grim type thing, and that was the point. That was the breaking point.
I did ask. Silly me. All right. What about you, Terry?
I actually think it was pretty early. If you define The Last Unicorn as not Disneyfied, because that got pretty dark. There's a harpy. Spoilers. There's a harpy that just straight up killed an old woman.
How could you spoil that movie? It's only 30 years old.
It's not the ending. I didn't
But I liked
feel
it back
that.
then, though. They didn't necessarily show the horrendous act, but they showed you enough to know that that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. So I think at least by the mid 90s, I had figured out, oh yeah, there's some dark stuff out there. Which kind of led to other things like Supernatural and other versions of some of these stories.
Okay. What about you, Paul?
Well, I think I was probably maybe 7 or 8 years old when I snuck to a friend's house and watched Poltergeist.
Step into the light, Carol Ann. Step into the light.
I was not able to sleep with a closed closet door or with an open
TV?
closet door for years.
TV static.
TV static, no.
Oh, that puts
But
you
then I
at
think I really started getting into it when I started getting into D&D in like 85, 86 is when I really started doing a lot of research into the actual mythological. That's when I also started getting into myths, legends, folklore, and researching that stuff.
Okay. All right, John. You going to bring us up or bring us down with this answer?
Let me see. I'm still gonna go with Black Cauldron. That's the earliest I remember seeing any kind of. Because in the mid '80s, Disney was a dark, could be a dark place to be.
Oh yeah.
Slimy
I mean, we
cauldron
did see-
skeletons.
We did review the black hole where they literally Disney took you to hell. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it was Disney Event Horizon.
basically,
even in Snow White, it gets dark when she's running through the forest.
Oh, when the Axeman, is that what it was?
And Stepmom.
The Huntsman, I think.
The Huntsman. Yeah.
have her
Yeah,
follow
there's no
her.
way Disney could do. Because I've heard they're gonna do like possibly a reboot that nobody asked for Black Cauldron, and I'm afraid they're just gonna ruin it.
No, they missed it when Macaulay Culkin grew up.
Well, they're already planning on doing a reboot of Bambi, and they're actually getting rid of the point where Bambi's mother is killed.
Dude,
That was a key
life lesson
component
of
to the
listen your
storyline.
mother.
It's like the inciting event. Come on, Disney.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it was a major plot point.
That was a culminating event for Bambi.
Oh my god. Oh, well, we're just gonna do this without the major plot event that turns Bambi going away
Yeah,
with his dad.
because it's mean. Yeah.
They took the 7 dwarfs out of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs.
no,
No,
it's
they put 'em
Snow
back.
White in the collection of weirdos.
Yeah.
The magical people.
It's the Caesars.
So
Oh man,
not
I could
that kind
go
of
for a
podcast.
Caesar
So
right
we
now.
will move on because otherwise Nick might rant, and we don't want a Nick rant.
No,
he
no,
needs-
no. I'm only half a bourbon in. There's no ranting.
So Nick, when was it for you? We've asked everyone else, but I didn't forget you this time.
Oh, thank God. Because I
Because
have
there's
so
no
much to
coffee
say
involved.
about this. No, it was Clash of the Titans
Ooh,
Oh.
with
good.
the OG one. That's when it stopped being Disneyfied for me. I was learning about Greek history in school, and then my dad sometimes drops the odd pearl. He's like, "Hey, we should watch Clash of the Titans," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what that is." And so we watched that, and I was like, "This is the greatest movie ever made." The
Yeah.
claymation was awesome, but yeah, everything was dark. And then I started getting deeper into Greek mythology, learning about the Minotaur, and I'm like, this dude lives in a maze. That's stupid. But he's scary as hell the way they describe him.
So I think for me, this is going to age me, but I remember watching some of the Disney shows and seeing those creatures, and I'm like, "What is that?" And my mom was always, like, instead of giving you the answer, she would tell you to go look it up. But we used to have the door-to-door salesman, and we happened to have just bought the complete Encyclopedia Britannica for our house.
It's
And
like
so
28 books or something like that.
I think so.
They
It was
were-
a bunch
they were
of them.
big,
And they were hardbound
hardbound
with like
books. Yeah.
the rough outer edge that was just great if you're going to hit your sister with it. I mean, what? Theoretically, I didn't do that, Mom.
John Wick used it to kill a guy in a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that guy was like 7 feet tall. I would as well.
so I started reading the actual, like, basically encyclopedia definition of what these creatures were, and I realized that what I had seen on Disney was just not so, as far as it goes, and it just opened my eyes to everything. So it's Encyclopedia Britannica's fault.
You know, listening to Nick talk about Clash of the Titans, even if we were to go back to how dark Disney used to be, you can bring Hercules into it.
So for those listening at home, words can be weapons. # John Wick.
Just depends on your
Hercules
imagination.
So we're going to pause this and we're going to shamelessly show for the man, in which case today I'm actually plugging my own commercial because we run the show and we've been doing Nick's for a while. So I appreciate you. Hopefully you'll buy the books, read them, leave reviews, do the thing.
They were called the Human Marine Corps, but their cause was never humanity's, until the sleeper awoke. A century ago, all but 2 members of Lance Scipio's unit were executed for bringing dishonor to his regiment. Now he wakes into a strange new time and is tasked with whipping into shape the worst squad of misfits in the entire Human Marine Corps. The price of failure? Death. This completed series is set in the worlds of the hit Human Legion series by Tim C. Taylor, now released with a special novelette titled No Marine Left Behind, Freedom Can Be Won. So dive into this debut novel by author J.R. Handley as he takes you on an action-filled sequence of military science fiction glory.
Out freaking standing. That's an awesome commercial. And it's a good set of series and it's complete. So take that, George R.R. Martin. The series is done, man. All
The
right.
dishes are
quill.
done, man.
That's right. Did you see the memes that are floating around where they found additional text for the Gilgamesh, and the people quoting it are like, and so we found more books for Gilgamesh before George R.R. Martin has finished a series.
Oh, snaps.
Oh, snap.
Right? That's like, ooh. All right. So we were talking about our evolution of realizing that the myth and lore weren't as pleasant as Disney portrayed it. And somebody mentioned in the comments Jason and the Argonauts to go with Clash of the Titans. So did anybody watch that? What was that about?
Yeah.
It was one of the.
He was after the Golden Fleece.
It was one of the first, or one of the ones where Harry Housen actually did all the stop motion photography for it. It was one of the original stop motion for all the monsters, the skeletons, and everything were all stop motion. That's where I watched it when I was older, but I was just amazed by the detail and how they were able to do all that without CGI back when they actually had practical effects.
Fun fact, the restaurant in Monsters Incorporated is actually called Harryhausen's. Just saying.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, so we talked about, like, does everybody have a favorite? We've talked about what we found first, but do you have a favorite mythical creature? Don't all go at once.
I was going to say, it probably honestly depends on the day and what mood I'm in. But probably the most common answers you get from me are unicorns, elves, and dragons.
Okay.
Leprechauns.
What about you? Leprechauns? That fits. Irish Catholic.
Thank you.
I'm tracking it. Is there a Italian? Because you also got some Italian in you mentioned. Is there like an Italian leprechaun that we can add in? Just to stereotype.
No, the Italians believed in fairies, i.e., like in Pinocchio, the blue fairy.
Just for the record, Mr. Court Officer, let the record show Nick did point to Stabby when he talked about leprechauns.
I don't know why we're the same.
Italian leprechauns, usually they're called Uncle Giuseppe.
It looks like we lost John. He's going to probably reboot, the computer internet goblin.
I'm on a bus.
All right, so the leprechauns for you. What about you, Stabby?
Mermaids.
Okay.
Mermaids. I'm a mermaid person. I'm a beach person. Nick has gills, not me. But I don't know. It's always been mermaids for me. The idea of being able to, swim and live and comb your hair with a fork instead of eat with it. Something about it. I don't know.
Oh, you mean a
Mermaids.
dingle hopper?
A dingle hopper. Yeah.
I knew somebody was going to have it. Somebody. I'm glad it was Terry.
I'll be here all night.
I was born and raised in the middle of a desert. Like, the beach was my dream, Getting out of the desert, you dream about the beach. And who lives there? Mermaids. Mermaids live there.
And jellyfish.
So I watched Cabin in the Woods, and that was the running theme that he always wanted mermaids. And
The
then
merman. The merman.
mermaid at the end is what, well, it made his day less pleasant.
It's so funny him going from the West Wing to that movie.
So what about you, Paul? What's your favorite?
Well, I've got a few, but I really like the kitsune from Japanese mythos. Maybe because I'm a big League of Legends fan, and one of the characters is a kitsune, and I just like the whole idea of cute Japanese fox spirit. I've also got dragons and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not picky, but kitsunes I'd have to say are my favorite. I don't know why or how long I've liked them. It's just they've always been that I've enjoyed.
Okay. All right. So kitsune it is. All right. So what about you, John?
I've always liked centaurs for some reason. I don't know if it has anything to do with me being a Sagittarius, but I've always thought that centaurs were pretty damn cool. But I also like chimeras, and I was real big into Greek mythology when I was a kid too. So just fantasy in general, I find interesting.
So for the people that are fans of the kitsune or wondering what it was, I went ahead and found a picture for you. You're welcome, Paul. All right. So we've got.
I have a question about centaurs.
Go on.
Where's the genitals?
I've never looked.
Is it?
I've heard
you
they're
think
hung
it's more
like a
towards the
horse,
front or towards the back? Like a horse.
I've heard they're hung like a horse though, so I don't know.
Well, they're part horse. Okay. Some questions just aren't meant to be solved.
I've always seen it portrayed like in at least anime or some of the other stuff.
What are you watching, Paul?
Dude, that's called hentai, man.
No.
Corn.
No, I've seen pictures where they've had the genitals as where a normal horse would be.
Okay.
It makes sense.
I've never.
No, it does, because it would look weird towards the front, right?
Yeah.
I think it would look really weird.
So, I pulled up a list of the most famous mythical creatures. And it goes dragon, unicorn, fairy, werewolf, mermaid, minotaur, vampire, pegasus, phoenix, basilisk, cyclops,
those are cool too.
griffin, chimera, banshee, kraken, hydra, centaur, ogre, bigfoot, troll, leprechaun, demon, gnome, and ending with a zombie.
I love werewolves, but I've always associated them with horror
monsters.
Yeah,
monsters with monsters,
and not necessarily mythical creatures.
Well, depending on the myth, some believe that werewolves were tied to Diana, which is why they changed in the moon.
Interesting.
Okay.
Artemis, or if you're going with Greek Artemis, which is the huntress. That's why they. That's why they change in the moon is because of the tie to, because Diana was a moon goddess, Artemis was the moon goddess, and one myth I heard was that the original werewolf made a pact or something with Diana or a curse of some sort, and that's how it progenerated throughout history and why they're tied to the moon, which is why silver is supposedly useful against it, is because silver was always associated with the moon. And since werewolves have a direct connection to the moon, the silver would act as a antagonist to block any powers that they would get from the moon. Stuff like that.
Okay, for me, I don't know. I always like the Selkie just because I grew up in Navy Town, so it's the water creature that can like shapeshift. And it's kind of cool. Like, Little Mermaid was a thing when we were kids, and the idea of just, fighting sea monsters with a trident sounded cool. So the Selkie was, what I found when I went looking in Encyclopedia Britannica for sea monsters. So
Not the Loch Ness?
Nessie too, but I don't find her on the list of legendary creatures, because most people that attribute that to like I don't know, like a cryptid more than a legendary creature, like an ancient dinosaur type creature that just didn't die like we thought. And as much as that sounds crazy, we have found skeletal remains wash up on beaches of creatures we thought were extinct for various fish creatures. And
Krakens are pretty cool too.
Kraken, yeah. I didn't find that until later though. So
yeah.
Okay. What is it about the Kraken that speaks to you?
It's pretty much the king of the sea. There's nothing that can really harm it or do anything to it, and just did what it wanted. But yet at the same time, if you could call on it to do your bidding, it got the job done too.
Okay. All right.
I like the gnomes.
Go on.
They were so mischievous. They're just so mischievous. How can you not love that? Like, they would just fuck with people. And it was like when you're trying to sneak something past your parents and you freeze. Like, that's gonna keep your parents from seeing you.
Okay. Did it work? No. So
No.
So
But
a lot of
that's with the gnomes.
A lot of mythical creatures are tied to the various religious pantheons of the various historic cultures. I know the most commonly known one are the Greeks and the Romans, because the Romans basically stole and morphed all of Greek culture. Does anybody think other cultures had pretty cool ones that might not have heard about?
The Japanese got a ton of them.
Japanese are good.
Japanese, the yokai. That's where the kitsune come from.
The
There's a lot of fun Celtic and Gaelic ones as well.
I mean, shoot, even the Indian and Filipino have some
Filipino has some fun ones.
Like the Pangolin, I think it's called.
That sounds about right.
Really,
Native Americans have the Wendigo.
Skinwalkers.
Thunderbird.
Ooh, Arizona shit. I don't mess with that.
Utalisi.
Okay, keep going.
My ex-wife.
You got.
I was going to say something like that for mine.
African voodoo. You got a lot of voodoo and Haitian voodoo. You got some of the spirits of the land in Africa, from the Zulus or some of those tribes. I mean, every religion has some type of mythical creatures tied to them in some way, and all of them are pretty interesting. Some are more, I mean, even Judaism has their own mythical creatures, like the golem.
Yeah.
Not the beady-eyed guy from Lord of the Rings, like the big rock monster guys from the earth.
Well, you gotta love the Irish culture too. They got some neat things. They have
I mean,
red cap. They
The
You're
red
gonna have to
cap
speak up a
goblins.
little bit, Stabby.
She was talking about
Te-
the Irish Gaelic culture. With the red cap
Technically,
goblins.
Paul, give her a second to speak.
right.
Oh, hold on. Let me mute, babe. Sorry.
Lo siento.
I was just saying, growing up in my family, we're Italian, Irish, and German, so we have all different types of mythical creatures, but the Irish always kind of spoke to me because they have some pretty neat ones. Because one minute you're hearing about pixies and leprechauns, and the next minute you're hearing about red caps, and they're a little bit darker than a leprechaun. They're a little bit darker than a pixie. And then you have, all the other Irish ones. I, of course, just lost my train of thought because I was saying it to Nick and my brain was on track, but it's gone. But the Irish have a lot, and theirs go from something so adorable to something pretty dark really quickly.
Okay. I know the movie The Leprechaun put the little figures.
You don't count that atrocity. Or
Go
those
on.
atrocities, I should say.
I don't know. I thought it was a funny movie, like a campy horror movie.
Come on. It
Oh,
had,
I think we might have lost a friend. Go
Davis
on.
in it.
Willow
And,
was good. That had a lot of good fantasy characters in it.
Oh, the brownies, because they stole the baby from
I
that
love those
stupid
guys.
Daikini when he was taking a pee-pee.
And they like beer.
Actually, one of the movies that I liked was Legend.
Ooh, that was
Oh,
really
that's
good.
one of my favorites.
That's a good one.
It had all sorts of mythical creatures in it.
And if you haven't watched that movie, you're not old enough to listen to this podcast.
Tim Curry is the origin of my childhood trauma. Legend.
Yeah.
I was going to say, from which film?
And
Pretty much all of the ones in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, when was Rocky Horror? That also scared the shit out of me.
Yeah,
Late
that's fair.
70s, early 80s, I think.
Yeah. Guy's an icon of making me want to wear diapers into my 30s.
Again, this is not that kind of podcast. It's family friendly. We don't talk about your
different strokes for different folks, man.
We don't judge. All right,
judgment here.
so
Not out loud.
not allowed. Stabby will judge with her knife.
Oof.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit all over the place. What do you think is the most interesting mythical creature? It doesn't have to be your favorite, just the one that's the most interesting.
I think my answer comes mostly because I don't know much about them, and that's the Oni from Japanese folklore.
I think Oni, and I'm thinking Stargate, the enemy at the end where it got a little jumpy, the Sharky.
I got a little
Or
here,
Halo, Office of Naval Intelligence.
Oh, gross.
I'm a nerd.
I don't know. As much as I like to draw, I like, I want to say all mythology, but from a creative standpoint, I can't pick a favorite because Paul was talking about the Filipino mythological creatures, and those are just messed up and really fun to draw. So I just like the imagination behind them all.
Okay. What about you, Nick? The most interesting for you?
The most interesting. Wow. That's a tough one, man.
You want me to answer while you think about it?
Yeah, move on, man, while I give this some thought.
I'm going to say the dragon, I think, is the most interesting to me because it spans so many cultures and has so many different aesthetic looks and lore behind it. And it makes you wonder what about it crossed so many cultures. And that's what
I've
makes
seen encyclopedias on dragons, and surprising how many different interpretations there are for the same thing.
Yeah. So, is there anybody besides Nick that wants to weigh in while he thinks? Because I can see the smoke.
I'm kind of in the same boat with John. I mean, they're all interesting in their own specific ways. Each one has a little bit to offer. I mean, as I said, of course, the Japanese, but also the Chinese mythos. I'm a big fan of the Fae. So a lot of Celtic, Druidic, the Seelie Court, Unseelie Court, stuff like that. But I think I don't really have one or the other. I think they all have their own unique, and they're all fun to play with because it gives you a chance to delve into other cultures to see how they think, to see what they come up. And if you look at it, they all have a common theme. You could see something in, say, Filipino mythology that has something that could be attributed in, say, Greek mythology, and so on, because they're all try to explain personalities or something that happens uh in the physical world or something like that.
I kind of look at it as it's kind of that particular culture's version of a urban myth. Because most of the ones I remember hearing about, there was always a reason behind what happened in the story. There wasn't a mythical creature that did something just for shits and giggles. There's always a lesson to be learned.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nick,
I
now
think
that you've had time to think and we've all run filler for you,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
we do what
Couldn't
we
do
can.
this without my fullback, so I put glory to God to having a team on my side that was able to get me to the end zone and get us 7 points.
And chicks dig scars. Remember that.
And chicks dig scars. I think the goblins are probably the most interesting because they can be portrayed as evil or dark, and they've also been portrayed as like lighthearted and playful. The common theme between the two, they are pranksters. They're dickheads. You know, they play jokes. Now, depending on what side of the spectrum you fall on, whether it's the light side or the dark side, they're still playing jokes. Some of them are horrific, and it's only funny to them. Huh?
In Ireland, it's called a puka.
What is it called in Ireland?
A puka.
A puka. I thought you said something totally different that I will not repeat on air. So I think that's what's interesting about them because they're like one of the few mythical creatures that can be portrayed as, you know, good guys are helpful or the antagonist, you know. So I think mainly it's based on the imagination, but you see in a lot of folklore, depending on where the goblins originate from, either France or Germany or some other places in Europe, how they're used. And I find that interesting because that for story, just from a storyteller's perspective, there's so much variety and so much depth I could do with those things. You know, and I could combine them too, and then make them just like the reader be like, I don't get it. They just killed a dog and hoisted it up like for meat, like the predator, but they brought the dog collar back to the owners. Weird, you know, weird stuff like that. You know, they think they're being helpful, but still, at the end of the day, they're still dicks.
Okay. All right. So, you know, you talked about a little bit of, we've all hinted at some of the darker aspects of some of them. So what is the scariest mythical creature? And obviously that's subjective, and clown isn't on the list, Stabby. Sorry.
You didn't even let me answer the last question.
I thought you did answer.
Shame on you, sir.
I didn't. And it's the boogeyman.
The boogeyman is the most interesting?
He's sitting right there next to you.
Is. Everybody has a boogeyman. Everybody. In Italian, it's called l'uomo nero. In Ireland, they actually call it a bodock.
Okay.
Everybody, Baba Yaga. Everybody has.
I thought that was a witch.
Everybody has a boogeyman.
The Baba Yaga?
Yeah. Or am I
It's
thinking?
a generalized term for boogeyman, witch,
Oh, okay.
And I think
spellcaster.
I think that has to be the most interesting because it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Everybody has a boogeyman. Not everybody has a goblin. Not everybody has a unicorn or a mermaid, but everybody has a boogeyman.
Okay. All right. So what do you guys think is the scariest?
Clowns.
Not on the list.
Come on, that was funny because he said it wasn't.
All right. Besides the clowns.
Scariest.
Something that can
Gremlins.
deceive you or possibly change shape so you don't know what to expect from it.
Change.
Skinwalker.
That'd be pretty freaky. Especially if
Well,
you
yeah,
saw
when
it
the-
change right in front of you.
Oh, I would need to change my underwear. I have to agree with John. Skinwalker is probably the scariest because it can change shapes. Anything that can change shapes on you, like John Carpenter's Thing, scary. Scary as hell. Because you don't know who to trust or what to
Yeah.
trust.
That was actually one of my answers too, was the shape shifting had to be one of them just because they could be anywhere among you. And that's kind of what makes them scary. Although you can kind of play with that. Like I've read some stories where somebody gets bitten and they turn into a shifter, but instead of like a scary wolf, they become a poodle. And then you just laugh at them.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely think shifters are right up there with the scariest. There's one in Babylonian culture that I did some research on when I was writing a short story a while ago, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Pabilsag, Pabilsag, which is a Sagittarius-like creature, but it's got a scorpion tail, and it's pretty deadly. Some
Like
Babylonian.
a chimera?
No, it's what?
Like a chimera?
Almost. I couldn't find a picture of it. There's not a lot that survived from Babylonia, unfortunately, but they had some pretty interesting gods. And goddesses and creatures that survive mostly through letters that they were sending out in cuneiform and whatnot. But that's a pretty good one. And then the bugbear, which everyone thinks about from D&D, but was a Celtic child-eating hobgoblin. So I heard stories of those when I was younger. Better do your chores or. So
We
now that I
talk about like the south of the border stuff, like the
Chupacabra?
Chupacabra, La Llorona, which is just a spiritual entity, but those are all mythical creatures. The Kukui. Oh, the Kukui got in here. I work with a lot of Hispanics and they tell me about that stuff. And I'm like, man, that sounds scary as shit.
Okay.
I'm not going south of the border. Not even for Taco Bell. I'll keep that.
Well, if you're south of the border, why would you eat at Taco Bell when you could get
That's not real Mexican food anyway.
The authentic
Sure it
stuff.
is. At 3 a.m., it's real Mexican food, believe me.
I think the scariest for me is the Shagath.
Which is, go on.
Go on.
An amorphous mass void with multiple eyes and suckers. It's one of the minions of Cthulhu.
Nice.
Oh, the old ones.
Minion of the old ones.
Mm.
That was another thing we never really touched on with mythical creatures are the old ones.
I have read a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft's work. That's some fascinating visuals as well. I did.
Really
The Animator is one of my favorite movies. That comes from H.P. Lovecraft.
I did a short story based on the Shadows of Innsmouth, and all the creatures in there look like they were fishmen, like a creature from Black Lagoon. I mean, I knew after I read that book that he was just a raging racist, but ignore all that. His work was fascinating.
Separating the art from the artist, I get it.
Yes, sometimes you have
Except
to.
for Hitler, I don't care if he was a painter. He's
No.
a schmuck.
Yes.
I think scariest
Nazis
for
in the
me.
mouth.
Sorry.
Oh, I was saying punch Nazis in the face.
Silence, John. Terry needs to speak.
Oh, I was going to say probably the
I got this.
Wendigo would be scariest
Ooh,
to me.
Nice.
It's like
That
the
was
woods.
It was a
Yeah,
good
the
episode
woods-
of Supernatural.
Yes, there's that. It's often portrayed with like a deer skull over where its head would be, or that just is its head, thin, tall, and it's often associated with the northeast of this continent, which is my favorite terrain. So I could be out in the woods in the northeast and I could find a Wendigo and I would probably die.
Pretty
I
much.
would say beautiful words at your funeral.
Weren't
thank
the
you.
Wendigo like called upon?
Where they
Like
summoned
they
them.
didn't just roam
I
around.
think they have to
Didn't-
be called
There was
on.
like a
to come
curse
get you.
that was set upon somebody, almost like Pumpkinhead.
Yeah, there's a couple different versions I've heard of, and I have not done enough research on them to know what is more based on actual Native American legends and beliefs as opposed to what's portrayed in popular culture, like Supernatural or the Stephen King books, Pet Sematary, things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where those lines are,
Fair.
but they're still
I'm gonna-
creepy as all get out.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So
That's
Paul,
quite
you
cool.
were throwing something in a side comment that was germane to the topic. So could you throw that out there for the listening audience?
Wendigos are also very prevalent in Northwest United States, Eskimo Inuit culture in Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, going on up to Alaska. There's a lot of myths and legends that deals with Wendigos. If I can remember correctly, I think there is a urban legend that there was a Wendigo in Deception Pass Forest, in the whole forest around Deception Pass up by Whidbey Island. Supposedly there is a Wendigo that haunts that area.
Ooh.
No, it's just my
I'm happy
ex-girlfriend.
that's
She's
right,
running
man.
and hiding from me. I apologize for setting her loose in the region.
I think if you're gonna really talk fear, it's the creatures that make you do things that you normally wouldn't do, like
Go on.
sirens and banshees.
Ex-wives.
I said what I said: sirens and banshees. You know, it's scary enough when something takes on the form of something else. It's scary when you see something shape-shifting in front of you. But think about seeing something and it telling you to do something that you normally would just never do, and you do it just because it told you to. I think that's more scary because it takes away your free will. It takes away your chance to run, to, you know. But it takes away your ability to do the natural human thing and protect yourself.
That's true.
Okay. So
I
we've
think
talked
that's
about
why
Oh, go ahead.
demons and spirits that possess people are so scary, is because it takes away that free will that you get possessed and it makes you do something that you normally wouldn't do. Say a person who was nice and gentle could get possessed by a certain demon or spirit or whatever, and next thing you know is they're a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
Movies and books, that's a common trope when dealing with horror, is possessions.
And a lot of videos have been coming out of, you know, people out on their first fishing trips overnight or their first time being on crabbing boats, and they're standing out on the back of the boat by themselves, just kind of enjoying the beautiful night, and they start hearing singing in the middle of the ocean, and they're like, do you guys hear that? And everybody else on the boat's going, nope, you don't hear nothing. Ignore it, walk away. And it's that moment where you're like, these boat guys know something. They know something. They're just not telling. And I want to hear their stories because they've obviously seen something that they're not talking about.
Okay. That works. All right. So we've talked a little bit all over the place, and like most of these topics, when we start, trust local mariner, just not the sports team, they suck. We've talked all over the place with these topics, and there's always room to dive in more deeply on the various niches. And if you've got any you want us to talk about, dear listener, like chime in. We list all the social medias at the end, and we're easy to get a hold of. But which of these mythical creatures have you guys used in your creativity, either your writing or your drawing?
Well, when Paul brought up the Filipino ones, I had a commission where I got a chance to draw one, so I went down this little rabbit hole, and that's when I learned about it. Before there's an anime on Netflix about Filipino mythology as well, and apparently that's a famous manga they have. So
Okay.
those were fun. I've done traditional vampires, werewolves, I've drawn dragons. when I was airbrushing, I had done a picture of a centaur because I was trying to figure out how Boris Vallejo does his work. It's just the shapes and the challenge of creating something outside of what I normally do. I'll never not be fascinated by it.
Okay. All right. So, what about you, Terry? Which have you used so far?
Well, I've used dragons twice in some of the stuff I've been working on the writing front.
What about from narrating front?
Also dragons. There's the author that I narrate for, J.F. Posthumous, uses a ton of various creatures. Not all of them have voice, but they are mentioned and described in there.
Okay. Paul?
What's your dragon voice?
Oh, dragon voice? Well, it's kind of like this. He's a bit of an ass, but he's
I use
fun.
typical urban fantasy: dragons, werewolves, vampires. I've got an idea that I'm working on where they exist, but there's a veil that keeps them hidden. And if you're aware, you could see it. And I always hated the whole idea that just because they're a vampire, they're evil. You could say you could have a good vampire. I mean, TV show Forever Knight. Nick Knight was a cop vampire. Just because you're a vampire doesn't necessarily mean you're an evil, blood-sucking demon from hell. It's all about your actions. Same thing with angels or demons. I kind of like to have that little different spin on stereotypes and the normal on what we think about when we say werewolves or vampires or demons or angels and so on.
I would have called that show Vamp Cop.
So, Nick, which have you used in your either your writing or your drawing? Because you've done both now.
I spoiler alert for all my AppG Comics fans, because this comic one day will show up and I'll promote the hell out of it. I have this character named Neferin Vlad Dracul. He was turned in Ireland, shunned from his village, traveled east, ended up in Wachilla, and came across a young man coming from another war called Vlad Tempest. And he ended up, because he was starving, he sucked him dry. And in my world, when you do that as a vampire, you take on their essence and their memories. It makes them easy to blend in amongst the populace, and pretend to be somebody else. So it was going to be a book that follows him through his adventures as Vlad the Impaler, because he took over his identity. And as technology advances, he understands that technology is going to be the future, and he starts getting really into technology. And he has friends. He makes friends with a former werewolf servant of his. One day he's like, this is kind of stupid. You guys are just as powerful as us. We should just be friends. Eventually, in modern times, the werewolf named Ezekiel, he calls him Zeke, opens up a bar in New York City called Hair of the Dog.
Sounds
We
like my
actually have a bar named that in Virginia Beach near my mom's.
Is there really? Does it have a werewolf head on it? Because that'd be cool.
It actually has a. You know what? I'm going to take a picture of it next time I go, and I'll send it to you.
So because this is going to open up the paranormal type side of AppG Comics. He's going to be the lead. He's going to be the Constantine, the Dylan Dog,
the Australian Hellblazer.
Yeah, but he's going to be a vampire. He's into the occult. He's used nanotechnology to put a protective shield around him so he can walk in the daylight. So I really enjoy this vampire character. I've been working on him since my early 20s. I got into the hell was it called? There was a website where it was back and forth storytelling. So you would create the plot and the environment, and then someone else with their character would come in. So it was like a role-playing game that was online, but we didn't roll for initiative or anything like it. We just continued the story, and I really enjoyed it. I kept going with it. I'm like, man, this guy would make an awesome character. He has showing him put the contacts in his eyes because his eyes are blood red with, and black. So he's got to blend in. He has to answer for why this corporation has a guy that looks similar to the previous guy that should be dead. So it shows that the links he would go through prosthetics and theatrics to carry on the lie that he was born in like 1500s in outside of Dublin.
Okay.
So I do enjoy vampires. I enjoy werewolves. I found an opportunity to create this story, and probably in the next 2 years I'll be able to actually get that out.
Okay. So I think I've used everything from the ancient Babylonian, because I wrote Ishtar's Rising, which was sort of set in Mesopotamia, otherwise known as Iraq. And then more recently, I'm working on a series that's using, with James Ward, the Cursed Brigade. So it's all the ancient Egyptian creatures. And then that's going to pantheon hop from ancient Egypt to Greece and all the other ancient places. So they're going to see basically the entire Encyclopedia Britannica of creatures is going to get there at some point, assuming people like it and keep reading it. And then I'm working on a also with James, a story where they get sucked into a D&D game. It's a portal fantasy. So that's basically the monster manual spilled onto a page. So all of them is, I guess, my answer, because I'm writing 2 books at once because I'm a moron.
Are we counting zombies as mythological creatures? Or is that more horror like the werewolves?
I would think it's more horror. Zombie, I mean, werewolves count. They're even on the list. I don't know that zombies would.
Well, they're mythical.
Me either. I was
culture.
Just thinking about it. It's been in different types of cultures. I didn't know.
Well, Egyptians, I mean, Anubis had the army of the dead.
I've always looked at mummies as a type of zombie.
Well, according to Wikipedia, a zombie, which is Haitian French zombie, Haitian Creole zombie, Z-O-N-B-I, Kikongo, which is zombie, is a mythical undead corporeal revenant creature created through the reanimation of a corpse. In modern popular culture, zombies are most commonly found in horror and fantasy genres. I stand corrected. It is indeed.
Well, good. Most of my professional work has been zombies. Yeah, most of my professional work has been zombies of some sort.
All right. Well, then that counts. So with that being said, what is everybody? We're going to start with you, Paul. What are you writing and how can they find you?
I'm writing a few different things right now. You can find me on Twitter. X. I've got an Amazon author page. I've got a Facebook author page. And one of these days I'll get around to making a website.
Yeah, they're sometimes optionally good idea. All right. So what about you, Terry? What are you writing and how can listeners and viewers find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
Right now, I'm working somewhat diligently on a short story that also happens to include 2 dragons. Haha, thematic. And I'm most commonly found, if you search a little bit, on the Book of Face.
Oh,
Terry, did you ever watch the Starsky and Hutch movie?
I have not, actually.
Okay, so there's a line in there because you said 2 dragons, and Starsky and Hutch are talking to a prisoner, and he'll only give information if they do weird dragon stuff. And he goes, and it's Will Ferrell playing the character too, so it's gold. And he goes, "All right, guys, I'll give you a little bit more, but I got to level with you. It's going to get a little weird."
Oh boy!
Watch that movie. You'll laugh. Hopefully, you'll laugh. If not, feel free to email me and tell me I'm full of shit.
And if you need to send him your therapy bill, just do that too. Clearly.
Yeah, Nick pays for therapy, apparently. Hold on, let me see that banner one more time. Oh, I deleted it. Oh my god, that was
all right. So John, I muted you while you were talking, so let me unmute you. But what are you working on and how can they find you on the wild, wild interwebs?
I'm on all the main social media under Seclusion Studios. I've done Exodus Z is my latest book. It recently got funded on Indiegogo this time. And I think we're working on fulfillment. I have to get with my writer because I think by the end of the week or the end of the month, we're going to be starting production on issue 2 of Exodus Z. I found that sketch for that Filipino artwork I told you I had done. So monsters in general are fun. I've done like Creature from the Black Lagoon type monsters for the Lovecraft. Most of my professional work has been zombies. I've done some concept work for a book where the creatures in that were werewolves. So just anything scary, I seem to like drawing.
Is the Seclusion Studios a hint to friends and family to leave you alone so you can work?
No, I came up with that when I was in high school, actually, because I think that's when I started realizing that I liked being alone and away from people.
All right. Well, this is the part of the introduction. The podcast, I will speak, I promise, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book, so do your part. And if you're a comic book reader and you can't find a place to review, start your own dang website and do comic book reviews or something creative and review them there. But either way, you should share the thoughts of the things you read. It helps the authors, be motivated and understand that you want more. And if you don't do that, you can't complain when your series die on the vine. All those books you never got endings to, if you had reviewed it, maybe it would have. Just saying. Nick, do you want to add something to that? I'm seeing you give me the look.
No, I was agreeing with you, man. I was a cheerleader back here. I'm like, for real, dude. Review that comic.
That's right.
Review that book. Woo!
At least the good ones.
The good ones, right? Share your thoughts.
How are you going to know if you don't read them?
Outstanding. And speaking of stalking people online, you can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumbles, the Twitters, the email, which is blastersandblades@gmail.com. Madam Stabby Stabs, Instagram and Twitter, where you can send her all the hate mail. She will make you cry, though, so just fair warning. We link to our Facebook group and Facebook page, which coincidentally are named after the podcast. 3 guesses what it's called. All right, you got it wrong. Moving on. And finally, we have our website, which is everyone knows it's stuff. Anyway, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on and the co-hosts caffeinated. And Stabby, she will make you cry. She charges extra for that, though, just so you know. Or you could support the show more directly on our buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section it is for the podcast, and I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink the Java till it pours out of their ear holes. Speaking of the Java, if you like good coffee, and who doesn't, and you want it made in America because that matters to you, Coffee Brand Coffee is the place to go. Use our link in the show notes, or just go to their website, coffeebrandcoffee.com, and use the code PODCASTGRUNTS, and you will save 10% off the cost of your product. And even better, we get a little bit of a kickback, and you help keep the lights on. It's a win-win, people. You get coffee, we get coffee, because let's face it, if we actually ever earn money from them, we're just putting it back into their company for more coffee, because why not? We're that kind of addict, people. We sample our own products, man.
Don't get high on your own supply.
I already broke that rule, man. I'm drinking the
blueberry coffee.
S'mores. It's about the s'mores for me, man. I'm still I just ordered a refill because it was so freaking good. I was supposed to try other things, but my finger just accidentally, of course, hit the s'mores again.
They have one called Spiked Jack-o'-lantern. Spiked Jack-o'-lantern. Like
with
fancy pumpkin spice.
Basically, if it's gonna call it spiked, there better be booze involved.
Who says there's not?
The fact that they are shipping internationally.
Spoilers.
All right.
You can't buy the Spiked Jack-o'-lantern internationally.
Well, then maybe we will be getting drunk in a little bit. But instead, I would like to thank you, dear sober listener, for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy intoxicated co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And if you're enjoying the 3 a week instead of the usual Monday and Friday, let us know if you want us to keep that up for season 4, because we're getting really close to the end of the year, people. Where did 2023 go? I don't know. If you find it, tell me, because I think I lost part. And with that,
let's do the time warp again.
you want to